good Sunday morning. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and welcome to this week's edition of Community Focus. I'm joined by Rachael Cammarn, who is the Director of Marketing and Communications at the Toledo Opera. And this week, obviously, a big week because this weekend you had your performances of Romeo and Juliet. That's a big one there. And then also the student night rehearsal. So just talk about the community efforts here because really, when people get connected to opera, I think one thing that happens to them is their perspective is changed because they may have one view of opera when it's much more.
Sure. So Toledo Opera, we are really, really focused on the community. We are Toledo's opera company. So that being said, we've developed all sorts of community outreach programming that it stands as kind of our core programming. So that's around all the time. And then we create companion programming to go with our operas. So, for instance, with Romeo and Juliet, we had a Get into the Spirit of Opera at Toledo Spirits. The student night you mentioned is a part of our core programming. I believe we've been doing student dress rehearsals since maybe the 1970s. So almost as long as we've been around, we have recognized the importance of getting kids out to the opera to get, that VIP special experience and get to see this really cool art form.
And one thing we talked about in preparing coverage of Student Night was the fact that we want to reach more people beyond the people that you'll normally see at a show. And so, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I think it's a lot of different ways. It's kind of a patchwork because you never know how you're going to reach someone. We have seen the importance of social media. I like to think of social media as kind of the modern day word of mouth. You follow somebody, you trust their opinions, you like their takes on things, and if they recommend something, you're more likely to try it. But that being said, we work really closely with the Blade and the Toledo paper, Sojourner's Truth. We really try to interact with as many outlets as we possibly can because you just never know how you're going to reach somebody.
You mentioned this is Toledo's opera, and so Toledoans are a big part of the efforts of the Toledo Opera. So, in what way are
Absolutely.
Toledoans crucial to supporting the efforts?
Well, we wouldn't be an opera company if we couldn't put on opera. And part of what goes into putting on opera, especially in the United States, is purchasing of tickets and supporting your local arts institutions. We do everything we can to provide free programming to the community. So we will do, like I said, the Get into the Spirit of Opera, where we'll give like a preview of the performance. We work very closely with WGTE to develop free radio programming and podcasts that are accessible to everybody. We have a program called Opera Outdoors, which takes place in the late fall or early fall, late summer, and then again in the spring. And those are free concerts that typically take place at the metro parks. And we always try to sneak something in there to kind of say, hey, we're doing this show if you liked what you heard. Our resident artists, you'll see them in the parks, but you'll also see them on stage and they'll sing a little something from the actual performance or from the actual production. So, like I said, it's a real patchwork, but we really do our best to get out into the community and interact with the community. We also hire local artists. Our chorus is made up entirely of local people from Toledo, from the region. They're really the face and the heart of Toledo Opera. A lot of people who sing our small roles are actually local artists who are hoping to make it big, and we hope to be a step in that direction for them.
And we talked about how people can go to a show and their experience is much different than what they expected it to be. And so, what have been some ways people are often shocked when going to an opera show?
So one of the biggest things people always worry about what to wear to the opera. They think, oh, I have to wear like gloves and a gown and my furs. And that's really not it at all. There's no dress code. You can come as you are. We see a little bit of everything. I like to say dress for the experience you want to have. So if you want to be comfortable, be comfortable. If you want to have a fancy night out, go for it. Nobody, there's a little bit of everything. You'll fit in just fine.
And what are Toledo's roots with regard to opera? Because opera's everywhere at this point, but what are Toledo's roots with regard to this tradition of just great music and
Yeah.
performances where you can have the experience you want?
So Toledo Opera has actually existed for 65 years now. So we're, we're quite up there as far as opera companies go, and we do play a part on the national stage as far as the industry goes. So, for instance, for Romeo and Juliet, we have international world-renowned superstars, Catherine Lewick and Zach Borchevsky. And Catherine Lewick has really become a part of the Toledo Opera family. She and Zach are actually a married couple. They fell in love in Toledo while performing in one of our operas. And she has gone on and on to say that we are where she debuts roles. She thinks of us as a very nurturing company, but also I think the community comes into play because, we wouldn't be Toledo Opera without Toledo.
The last 65 years, a lot has happened. And so moving forward to the next 65 years, what do you think that's going to look like?
I think it's going to continue on the track that we've continued on. We have always stressed education. So we've always had our educational programs for almost as long as we've been in existence. We're one of the only opera programs with a preschool program, which is called An Opera is a Story. We really recognize the importance of taking these operas, which are sometimes hundreds of years old, and kind of stripping them down and saying, okay, what are the pieces of this opera? What are the themes that are still relevant to modern audiences? And that's what we really like to draw out of things, especially when it comes to our companion programming. So for Cinderella, for instance, that's 300 years old. We did that this past October, but it really comes down to kindness and the importance of being kind and gracious. And boy, I think that's still relevant.
For sure. And you said that you never know where you're going to reach people. And so, in terms of talking about those upcoming shows, where can people find the information to get tickets and really have that experience?
Absolutely. So you can go to our website, toledoopera.org, to get all the information on our upcoming performances. That does include our free performances as well. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter/X to get all of the latest information and the quickest updates.
Well, Rachael Cammarn, Director of Marketing and Communications at the Toledo Opera, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Jaden.
Thank you. And that's this week's Community Focus. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and have a great week.